The Hammer of God. Read by the author. Chapter 1. Highway to Heaven. The M1 motorway was already a clogged and congested artery in the awakening heart of London this early morning. Amidst the lorries, panel vans, and a host of imported cars, a small Nissan was wedged nose to tail between two big cement haulers. Inside, its occupants were finally relaxing after a successful night's work. They even had time to stop along the roadside and unfurl their prayer mats and praise Allah on the occasion of a new day. After the 3 months of planning and intense training that led up to last night's successful completion, Hassad allowed his team this earned respite. This break tempered his instinct to tell Dweed, in the back seat, to lower the volume and hence the tinny racket coming from the earbuds of the young Yemeni's iPod. "Are you pleased with our performance?" Emil asked Hassad, who was driving. "Very smooth, very professional. All of your time in Afghanistan was good training." "I'm glad you are pleased. Maybe you'll recommend us to another mission." "I like the feeling of success," Emil said. Hassad let slip a smile, but then turned his head with a look of annoyance at Dweed, who didn't catch his stern eye as he was bobbing his head to the beat and staring out at the hideous facades of the council flats and other bad English architecture passing by his rear window. "We started a drip. Allah's will be done. It will become an ocean." Emil, flushed with satisfaction, commented no further, because Hassad, their leader, was the only one of them with field experience, and so his compliment was like a graduation to him and the rest of his team. When the ocean was amassed, it would be a tsunami more effective and more devastating than any other to have befallen the pompous, arrogant American bastards. An ordained act of retribution for their defying and defiling the kingdom of Allah. From this triggering point forward, they would have to do nothing. The system would ensure the extermination of at least 10 million, maybe 100 million of the soulless infidels. Hassad focused on the glow of the morning sun rising, inhaled and then said, "It is a divine irony." Emil turned with amazement, because Hassad never spoke without first having been prompted. The leader continued, "The people of the West love their systems. They place their trust in numbers, science, and man-made laws. Soon they will be humbled and learn that a man should only place his trust in Allah." He looked toward Dweed in the rearview mirror. "Dweed, turn that thing down!" he barked, trying to penetrate the headphones, then continued in the somber voice of an imam at a funeral. "Only the Quran speaks for God through the laws of Muhammad himself. Solely through Islam lay the one path to God and the glory of his kingdom. All other roads are destined to destruction at the hands of Allah." Those in the car nodded in reverence and in deep belief. Hassad knew the hand of God had guided him this night, even when, as in this case, Allah was surely working through the unworthy hands of Hassad Barakas. Now that their mission was complete, all that remained was for Hassad and his team to wait a few days and then, one by one, innocently leave Britain, headed for various friendly regimes. In 2 weeks' time, they would all meet in the Sudan, secure in the knowledge that no one in the world would be any the wiser about their part in the mission. Their safe house, the London home of a true believer, proved to be the perfect base for their operation. Their host, not knowing their actual mission, believed them to be students on a spiritual quest with a local sheikh from a Knightsbridge mosque. In total, the plan was perfection, Allah be praised. Then it happened. There was a break in the traffic, and the vehicles all picked up speed. Dweed put the earbuds back in and turned it up. Rounding the bend with the morning sun obliterating the windscreen, Hassad went to turn to admonish the youth again about the racket when he caught the glimpse of a brake light and reacted quickly and just in time as the truck ahead had hit its air brakes and lurched to a stop. His fast reaction narrowly avoided wedging the nose of the Nissan under the rear of the truck's carriage. Unfortunately, the truck driver behind him wasn't as quick. The rule of maximum gross weight being what it is, the 1-ton Nissan collapsed from the impact of the 30-ton cement truck. The jolt shattered the windscreen and the side windows as the car's frame buckled from the front and rear as if in a giant vice. Hassad was bludgeoned by the airbag exploding out of the center of the steering wheel as the engine compartment accordioned into a flattened hulk. Emil next to him was knocked unconscious by a similar concussive blast from the passenger bag. Sarim and Daweed in the back were crushed by the flattening of the Nissan's rear under the wheels of the huge truck. The pressure of the back seat folding in on them made them explosively vomit blood and parts of their intestines, which sprayed all over the front seat and its occupants. The two truck drivers ran to the car crushed between their vehicles. Quickly surmising that the two in the back were dead, they felt the necks of the two in the front seat. The driver was dead, but the passenger was still breathing. The trucker held the passenger's face into the airbag until he, too, stopped breathing. The other one reached into the front seat and removed the map of Liverpool and the thermos bottle from between the seats. He climbed up to the back of the mixer and threw the thermos into the aggregate mix, sealing in cement its deadly viral residue forever. Then they feigned panic, flagging down anyone who would help. Traffic was at a standstill for more than 2 hours. In Liverpool that morning, the plant opened promptly at 8 a.m. Production was fully underway, as it had been for most of the year. The big pharmaceutical contract had given new life to the factory and most of the local workforce. Brian Jennings, the plant manager, expected a routine day. His calendar showed a morning visit by the Ministry of Health inspectors, same as every week for the last 20 weeks of production. Jennings was proud of his line, 100 days of 2-shift full-run production and not so much as 10 minutes lost. That was because he ran a tight and clean ship. He instituted work rules that called for the periodic maintenance and sterilizing of the line at half-shift intervals. He doubled the number of quality control samplings and created a worker incentive program to keep things running smoothly and efficiently. It was around 11 a.m. when the inspectors arrived. He led them right to the QC lab. Midway to the clean room, Inspector 537 asked, "May we sample right from the line this time?" That request threw Brian a bit. For the last 20 weeks, the inspectors were satisfied that his quality control lab held more than adequate daily samplings for them to test. Although couched as a request, Brian knew it was actually an order. To maintain decorum, he acquiesced, holding himself back from inquiring about the change of procedure. Brian knew the inspectors were not bound by law to offer him any explanation or reason. In fact, they had been very reasonable in not springing any snap inspections or undercover investigations on him thus far. He watched from his office overlooking the floor as the line was stopped, while the inspectors withdrew sealed samples of the serum from 3 points along the manufacturing process. When they finished, a klaxon sounded. The next 100 bottles would have to be trashed as a precaution against any variation in the process that came from restarting the line. Brian didn't give a moment's thought to the waste. He did, however, continue to wonder about the change of pattern of the inspectors. Later that day, as he was compiling his daily report, Brian mentioned this anomaly. But he was confident of his workers, machines, and systems, so the mention was merely a footnote. At the morgue, the London police were baffled that no relatives came forward to claim the 4 deceased Middle Eastern men from the wreck the day before. A check of their papers indicated that one DOA was Egyptian, another Saudi. The 2 men riding in front were both Yemeni. The Knightsbridge address that one of them had on him was the only available information about their local whereabouts. Immigration confirmed that they gave the same address on their entry forms when they disembarked their various aircraft. At around 6 p.m., the owner of the house at the address returned to find a car from Scotland Yard idling by the curb. All Mustafa Nassa could tell the authorities was that the 4 men lived in the apartment downstairs for 2 months, and they were religious students. A search of the apartment led to nothing to which to notify next of kin. It was decided that the entire matter would be turned over to the Office of the Foreign Secretary. The 2 drivers of the cement trucks did not have their status questioned, and so it was never discovered that the company they drove for was connected, through circuitous routes of finance, to Bin Laden construction. Those reviewing the case decided it was nothing more than a most unfortunate accident, and so it was entered into the official coroner's records and police files. Sealed in that file, destined never to be opened again, was any hope of the authorities divining the men's true reason for being in Liverpool that night.